It's time for Football at 4 with Geoff Mosher.
I think our track record in the last 20 years, how many NFC East titles, playoff appearances, and appearances in the NFC Championship game, those are some of the metrics I look at, and I'll compare our record with almost anybody.
Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, this is Football at 4.
It is Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. And it is brought to you by PropSwap, where America buys and sells sports bets. Sell your sports bet and take your profit. Find out how at PropSwap.com or download the PropSwap app today. Geoff Mosher is in the house today as the NFL draft is looming closer and closer. A big trade yesterday has kind of shaken some things up, and we go to Mosher to get some insight from him, what he's hearing as the Eagles 3 weeks away from the big day. What's going on, Mosher?
What's up, my friend? How you doing?
All is well. Yesterday, a big trade. Sam Darnold gets moved essentially for a song. I don't know. I mean, did you like the deal there?
Yeah, I mean, you could say that it wasn't much compensation for a quarterback. However, what was the market? You know, I mean, I don't know how many offers that the Jets were getting. Plus, most people knew the Jets were going to take a quarterback and needed to get rid of Sam Darnold. And you factor in Sam Darnold or Sam Darnold. We're not talking about a guy who has accomplished a whole lot. So, I mean, look.
All right. Well, Jeff's a little frozen there for you. But what I will say is this. Darnold.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. Darnold was once the third overall pick in the draft. He was tied to the hip to Adam Gase. So you wonder, how much that plays into him and his performance. But he was a guy that the Jets at one point looked at enough to draft number 3 overall. They end up getting a 6th-rounder this year and a 2nd and a 4th-rounder in next year's draft. So obviously
that's what I was going to point out. They have an army of draft picks now, the Jets have. So yeah, didn't get equal value, but tremendous amount of picks to be able to rebuild this team.
All right, so let's lead off with that kind of then. What does the Darnold trade mean for the Eagles at 12? Because now he goes to Carolina, who draft at number 8. You have that situation where they might have been a team that would have been taking a quarterback at number 8 should one be there. Are they still in play for a quarterback? How do you think that affects Philly at number 12?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a safe bet, although nothing's ever safe. But, I mean, you trade for Sam Darnold. You're clearly not happy with Bridgewater. I know Adam Kaplan has said that, and I agree with him, that, if the situation surrounding Deshaun Watson were any better, you would have factored the Carolina Panthers into those talks. So they had to go to Plan B, get a guy like Sam Darnold. Now, does that preclude them from drafting a quarterback? No, but I don't see them moving up, right, to get a quarterback. Maybe if one falls to them where they are. But right now, they're at 8, and I still think, it's going to be quarterback in the top 3. The Falcons are reportedly open for business, not surprising. So that's an invitation, I think, to the Denver Broncos to say, come get this 4th pick if you want to upgrade over the kid from Missouri, Drew Lock. And so there's a likelihood quarterbacks go top 4. And then you get into 5, 6, Bengals, Dolphins. I think that's your Jamar Chase and Kyle Pitts kind of range. And then 7, 8, 9, Lions, Panthers, Broncos. If the Broncos don't move up and stay there, you got to think that all 3 of those teams are going to look to beef up their offensive line. So you'll get your Sewells off the board, maybe Slater. We'll see. Maybe those 2 wide receivers from Alabama go at some point. I can't see Denver doing it. Carolina's got some pretty decent speed already with Robbie Anderson. They have a good receiver in DJ Moore. So it'll be kind of interesting there how that 7, 8, 9 plays out. I think that's where the draft starts to take a turn. But if you're the Eagles at 12, still kind of dicey if you want a corner because you've got Dallas ahead of you. You got Denver ahead of you. Got Carolina ahead of you. So if you want that corner, you may still be looking to with your eyes up there. Or you just say, hey, if those guys take the corner, that means one of those great offensive linemen fall or a great pass rusher like Kwity Paye might fall there.
All right. Number 1, I want to bring this up. You've got New York and Dallas drafting ahead of you. The chances of trading up to one of those two slots seems to be pretty slim. I doubt New York or Dallas is going to say, you want to move up to get a guy? Yeah, take our pick and we'll move back to your spot. So I would imagine moving to 11 and 10 are going to be very difficult. So if you want to move up, it's probably going to have to be 9, 8 into that range. So with that, give me one or more players that you think the Eagles would jump over New York and Dallas to target.
Oh, that's a good question. I can't remember in recent.
We're talking with Geoff Mosher, Inside the Birds podcast, having a little bit of a connection situation. There he goes. He's back.
Sorry about that.
You said, I don't remember in recent.
Oh, yeah. In recent history, a team moving up a couple of slots in the top 10 for a cornerback. Usually it's not the case. I could be wrong. I'd have to go back and look.
I mean, Howie's moved up for an offensive lineman, Andre Dillard. He moved up for a defensive lineman, Derek Barnett.
Right. That's where I can see. If one of those offensive linemen falls, I can see it. If the pass rusher, Kwity Paye, they really like, if they want to get him, they may have to move up. Because another thing I want to look up is I don't remember the last draft where no pass rusher, no DT, no D end, no OLB, and a 3-4 was taken in the top 10. But it kind of looks like that's going to happen this year. That might be the first time in decades. I'll go back and check. But it almost makes me believe that a guy like Kwity Paye is going to go higher than he's projected because of the law of supply and demand here. Everybody wants pass rushers, and he's really the only one. Not the only one, but the highest rated one. So you wonder if some teams are going to try to move up, or some of these teams that you think are going to take an Alabama wide receiver are going to go pass rusher instead.
Now, we just had Mike Tannenbaum on the show, and he did his mock draft to which who he would have drafted if he was in that team's seat on draft night, right? So his mock draft was who I would take if I'm the GM of that team.
Okay.
He has the Eagles landing Kyle Pitts. So essentially, Pitts passed over by Tannenbaum 11 times. My question is, if Pitts is passed over X amount of times, would the Eagles be then, hey, we've got to move up? Like, what point does he get to in the draft? Or Chase, which I don't see Chase moving past 6 really, but with one of those two guys, if they start to get to 7, 8, do the Eagles then think about moving up?
It's a very tantalizing possibility if he gets by 5 or 6, which not a lot of people think that is going to happen. But if he does, and he's within striking distance, at that point, Mike, what you have to do, the Eagles can do whatever they want. But what I think most teams would do is kind of look at their board and say, is Kyle Pitts, what's his grade compared to some guys that we think now are going to fall to us at 12, right? Whether it's Surtain or whether it's Horn or whether it's Paye or somebody else, Sewell, Slater. Is it worth what you may have to give up, which won't be a lot, right? You're not trading up for a quarterback, so you may have to give up one extra pick, a third or something like that to move up to get him.
They have 2/3.
Right, they have 2/3. Is it worth it? So that's a decision they would have to make. I think there would be some scrutiny around it, like moving up for a quote unquote tight end type of player, even though it's well documented that Kyle Pitts can line up pretty much anywhere on the field. But the other side of that is, while people might be happy about it, that would be, I don't know how many, it would be 20 years now, 21 years that they go without drafting a good solid cornerback in the first round. And that's certainly a position that they absolutely have to address. So you don't draft on need, you draft the best available player. But here's the money question, right? How do you compare like an offensive weapon like Kyle Pitts, that numerical grading versus a cornerback? I don't know. I'm not in the war room, but.
Well, it's interesting because I asked Tannenbaum about this in terms of if you have a draft class that's deep at one position, do you already know that the next year and what that draft class kind of looks like? And he says, absolutely, and that could be a tiebreaker sometimes. In other words, if this year's receivers class is deep and next year's isn't, and you have 2 spots, he says you might go with the deeper class this year, knowing that next year has a weaker crop.
I guess there's an argument to be made, though, Mike, that if offensive weapon or receiver is deeper this year, that means you can probably get a pretty good one in the second round that may be ordinarily a late first some other year. That's why there's too much of that, like could be, should be. You know, they say that about quarterbacks. I believe the Eagles at one point when they traded up for Carson Wentz said that they looked into the following year's quarterbacks, right, to see if they felt like it was a fertile ground. And if I'm not mistaken, is that the year that Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes went, or is it 2 years later?
Yes.
I forget, but
No,
either I think it is
year.
that one. So
they were the very next year, and Trubisky went too.
You just never know. You never know, and I don't know how many. I've heard what you're saying before. I'm not sure how many teams really abide by that, though.
All right, so then let's get to this. What's the likelihood, in your opinion, or from what you've maybe gathered, that the Eagles draft a corner? There's 3 that everyone keeps talking about at number 12. You've got Patrick Surtain II. You got J.C. Horn, son of Joe Horn, who was once a guest of this very program, by the way.
Nice.
And and Caleb Farley is the third guy. Yeah. Adam Kaplan has mentioned that Farley could be slipping with a back injury, maybe right on out of the first round. So that might change, make some things more difficult. But your thoughts on how likely the Eagles land a corner at 12?
Yeah, well, first on Farley, I think there's no question that having that back surgery, plus he's had an ACL done, is going to knock him out. I'd be shocked if he went in the top 15. Still could go in the first round, but it would be more surprising to me if he went in the top 15. As far as the Eagles are concerned, I think that this is going to be the year that they probably do it unless they get a pass rusher or an offensive lineman instead. Meaning this is the year that I'm convinced it could happen, whereas in past years I would say, nope, there's going to be somebody better. There's going to be a more positional value somewhere else. So I would say that this is the year that I get, because there's 2 of them and they're really good, and the Eagles need so many corners, and they're sitting in a position where corner will probably be best player available where they pick. That doesn't usually always mean something for the Eagles, but I do feel like there's some really good dots to connect there. There should be. And I know that they like these corners.
Well, yeah, and I was going to say, like, if the Eagles, you like best player available, and they like best player available, most people do, but if you were saying biggest need, would corner be the top on their list?
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. They don't have a starting right now, as I talk to you. They don't have a starting outside corner to be able to compete on a day-to-day basis
Agreed.
in the NFL, right? Avonte Maddox should be in the slot. Darius Slay is one of your outside corners. If you were to play a game today with Maddox in the slot, your outside corner would be what? Craig James? I mean, I know he played for the Vikings, so he has some kind of experience with the defense that John Gannon is going to run, but he's a 4th corner. And everybody else, Michael Jacquet or Jamison Houston, I mean, these guys are all 4th and 5th corners, some of them at best.
Yeah.
So
it's embarrassing.
I've made the argument that you could draft. I have no problem if the Eagles draft a cornerback in the first and the second round. I don't care. If they're the best players on the board, take them.
Right. It's as embarrassing as DeGrom not being able to go more than 77 pitches last night.
Well, that's a joke as well.
If the Eagles take a corner, Geoff Mosher, which one is the best fit of the group?
So I hate to sound like Howie Roseman with the whole chocolate and vanilla comment, but I think that either one of them can play in the Eagles scheme. Horn is the more twitched up athlete. You know, I mean, he'll just check all the athlete boxes: size, vertical, speed, confidence, swag, all of that. He's great. And they're from what I hear, I mean, the Eagles are going to play some defenses that require press man coverage, good press coverage, and he can do that. Now, as Greg Cosell told us on his show, Horn can be a little grabby. All right, he can, which is tough in the NFL. You get flagged for that pretty quickly. Surtain is not necessarily the same caliber of athlete. He's still a good athlete, not like that, but the technician, just as Greg Cosell told us, he was born to play press man coverage. And so with this defense, which is going to rely a lot on disguise and some cover too, so you'll have some protection there, which Jim Schwartz did not do a lot for his corners. I personally feel like I would go with Patrick Surtain over Horn, because you're looking for that guy who puts it all together and has the football intelligence to play in a defense that's going to have multiple different fronts and different looks and disguises and things like that. But honestly, I don't think there's either of them don't necessarily fit.
Penei Sewell is, a lot of people think he's the best offensive tackle in the draft. But Rashawn Slater is a more versatile player, it seems like. And of the two, would he fit the Eagles better because they don't know where their need might be on the offensive line this year? It could be up and down that line. They have a good starting group if healthy, but is Rashawn Slater maybe a better fit than Penei Sewell for the Eagles? Would they have him higher on their draft board than other teams?
So it's almost like two different questions, like how you have him graded, but which one is more versatile. From what I understand, Slater is a type of guy who could probably move inside and have no issues with it.
He played a lot of guard at Northwestern. They moved him out to right tackle.
Correct. He is also kind of considered more the technician, whereas Penei Sewell is just not a great player, but also just a freakish athlete. Dancing Bear, Anthony Munoz, all that kind of stuff. I don't know that he's the type of guy you would slide inside, but that's okay to me. Like I'm not drafting a guy because he's able to play guard, unless he can also play tackle at a really high level. Like I'm drafting the best offensive lineman, and if Sewell is far and away the best, and he's there, and you're worried about getting him on the field, don't, because he'll get on the field. They'll figure it out.
Yeah, I know a lot of people really like Pitts. I mean, not Pitts. Well, a lot of people like Pitts, like Penei Sewell as the best tackle. But I think another group of people like Slater as the best lineman, which is a little bit different. So I just want to explain to you, Moshe, how Tannenbaum got the Pitts to Philly, all right?
Okay.
So he's got Lawrence 1. Now, remember, these are the guys Tannenbaum would pick if he was the GM. This isn't a mock draft of who he thinks will go to these teams. This is who he would take if he was the GM of that team. Trevor Lawrence 1, Zach Wilson 2, Mac Jones 3, although he said he would not have made the trade that San Francisco made, but now that San Francisco's there, he would draft Mac Jones. Trey Lance 4 to Atlanta, Penei Sewell 5, Jamar Chase 6, Jalen Waddle 7 to Detroit, Justin Fields 8. Now, I was a little surprised that he would take a quarterback to Carolina, even though they got Bridgewater and they just traded it for Darnold. But I guess having quarterbacks is Darnold's only on a one-year deal, is what he essentially explained.
So the Panthers are the quarterback factory now. Huh?
They're becoming one. Him and Howie went to school together, didn't they? Or they know each other pretty well.
Who's that?
Tannenbaum.
They know each other because Howie applied to the Jets, I believe, when Tannenbaum was there. They have a connection.
Yeah. Micah Parsons, 9. Patrick Surtain, 10. Azeez Ojolari, the 3-4 outside linebacker, 11. And Kyle Pitts lands at Philadelphia at 12.
Well, that's pretty interesting. Mike's a dialed-in guy, so that tells you that Azeez, and you did a better job pronouncing the last, Ojolari? Ojolari is, I mentioned that Kwity Paye would probably be the first pass rusher taken off the board, but clearly Azeez might go ahead of him. He probably fits a 3-4 scheme better, and that's what the Giants play as kind of that outside rush linebacker. Parsons going ahead of Kyle Pitts is pretty interesting. That would be to the Cowboys. He had Micah Parsons going?
No, he had Denver taking him at 9. And, of course, Denver took a tight end in the first round, Noah Fant, 2 years ago?
Right. That's actually a really good point. You know what? Stranger things have happened. I suppose I could see it. I think it would be a win in a situation for Eagles fans that were upset that they moved down to 12, thinking that they were out of Kyle Pitts' territory. However, there's just too many variables there between 5, 6, and 7 with Cincinnati, Miami, Detroit to think that Pitts is going to survive that.
All right. I asked Mike Tannenbaum what he thought of the Eagles, and if he got the call from Miami to make that deal, what he would have done, and if he liked the pick.
And I can't imagine anybody that doesn't from the Eagles standpoint. I mean, think about this. Let's put this into context. Last year, Buffalo gave up a first-round pick to Minnesota for arguably one of the best receivers in all of football, and Stephon Diggs. To go back 6 spots, the Eagles got 2 1s. I mean, that's insanely productive for them.
So he says, I can't imagine anyone who wouldn't like the pick.
Can I just nitpick one area? This is my biggest pet peeve with draft analysis. The Eagles did not get 2 1s. net because they gave up a 1.
I agree with
hate
that.
when people say you get 2 1s when you're giving up a 1 in the process, right? They got an extra 1. That's how people should phrase it. Anybody who tries to say you got 2 1s is just trying to make it sound prettier. It's like putting lipstick on a pig sometimes, right? You're just
I
trying
agree
to make
with
it
that.
prettier than it is.
I definitely
so
agree.
he got
with
an extra
that.
1.
Yeah.
But he's right about that. That's pretty impressive to get an extra 1 when the team that you're trading with is not taking a quarterback. That I think is impressive.
Absolutely. So that's how he got to Pitts, and there you go. So good stuff. Greg Cosell had Inside the Draft. That was a really excellent addition, so I encourage you all to check that out. The Inside the Birds podcast drops Thursday. You're usually on Wednesday. That's why.
Q&A is on Wednesday.
Q&A tomorrow. I said you're usually on Wednesday.
Oh, yes, that's right. I've got you all messed up.
Q&A is on Wednesday. Inside the Birds Thursday drops 6 a.m. DeCecco will be in tomorrow. We'll talk a lot of draft with him as well. I definitely want to ask DeCecco who he likes, what he thinks about that Slater Penei Sewell, because I know he's a big Penei Sewell guy. So
yeah, good question.
We'll get that with him on tomorrow's edition of Football at 4. All right, well, Geoff Mosher, that's all the time we have, unfortunately. We got a lot of people over in the chat over there that are asking questions. We'll have to get to those tomorrow. Moshe will be back on Friday. He is hitting in for Adam Kaplan on Friday's edition of Football at 4. I'll see you then, man.
All right, brother. Look forward to it.
All right, he, like August, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline as we got a ball of information for you there here on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app.